Hello and thank you for joining us on Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm Brandon Yates and today we will be chatting about the UEFA Champions League semi-final stages. We'll examine team performances, potential title contenders as well as other topics that have made this season's semi-finals absolutely box office. I'll be diving headfirst into these points with my two fantastic co-hosts, Yang Guang and Tianyu, and I think we're going to have some mixed emotions over here. This could be a bit of a testy topic because that second leg semi-final between Bayern Munich and Real Madrid, I mean, from a neutral's perspective, it was absolutely incredible. That's the drama and, the box office that we just absolutely love about the UEFA Champions League. But Yang Guang, as a Bayern Munich fan, a tricky pill to swallow, a bitter pill to swallow. I think Bayern played incredibly well, but Real Madrid just did what they've always done in the Champions League and somehow found a way to get that victory. But from your side of things, do you think it was Real Madrid getting a win or did Bayern Munich just throw it away?
Yeah, as a Bayern Munich fan, I have to say we gave away the victory. So devastating to lose like this. A lot of flashback. Manuel Neuer's mistake reminds me of the 2002 World Cup final when Oliver Kahn slipped the ball off in a supposedly easy catch and Ronaldo followed up for the opener for Brazil.
Yeah, and I think in moments like that, when a goalkeeper makes a mistake like that, it's just inexcusable. I mean, from our side of things, we are journalists and we, have to be super critical of these players. At the end of the day, they are human beings and it's going to be something that Neuer is going to have to live with for the rest of his life, like I'm sure Kahn did.
Yeah.
But when you get to that moment and you're that level of professional and you're that experienced, something like that surely is inexcusable, right?
Yeah, it's like that nightmare came back for me this time. Manuel Neuer. I mean, it's not only that catch. I was confused why he made that sloppy long-distance throw in the first place. And he could have played safe with just a few minutes left. But instead, he allowed Real Madrid to initiate that attack from Bayern's own half. And that catch, that drop was just, as you said, inexcusable. I think Neuer can catch that ball 1,000, even 10,000. Yeah, 1,000,000 times in practice in the other games.
I'm sure he feels the same way. And I think that's one of the heartbreaking things about sports and things that athletes have to deal with is that I'm sure in every single practice for probably the last decade of his career, he would have caught that ball in his sleep with his eyes closed. And then in one of the biggest moments of his career, he fumbles like that. I mean, how do you get past something like that as a player, but also as fans of that club? I mean, that's also something that Bayern fans are also going to have to deal with in their nightmares for a long time.
Yeah, another flashback. Bayern Munich conceded 2 successive last-minute goals against Manchester United in the 1999 Champions League final.
Now I'm having flashbacks, but positive flashbacks, and I'm currently dealing with the Manchester United nightmare.
Yeah, in that match, Bayern sent an all-defense squad in the final minutes and hoping to keep that 1-0 lead to the end. But instead, United punished them with 2 corners.
It's interesting that you mentioned that defensive setup that Bayern went with in the last minutes, trying to hold on to a 1-goal lead.
Yeah, it's a similar scenario.
We saw something very similar. And can Tuchel be to blame for not necessarily the overall outcome, but do you think that the decisions that he made with regards to substitutions and tactics could have resulted or been at least played a part in what ended up happening with regards to the final result?
I think Tuchel, he chose to take Harry Kane and Leroy Sané off in the final minutes. That was a huge mistake. I mean, in the final minutes, you don't change your squad like that.
And you don't change your formations. I mean, going from a back 4 to a back 3 and bringing on Kim, who has been very inconsistent all season and looked very out of place when he came on. I think that just opened the floodgates for Real Madrid, and I think they smelled blood at that point, and that I think it motivated them when they were probably not feeling any motivation at that point.
Yeah, you can't have all of your attacking threats off and just use heavy defense to keep that fragile one-goal lead. It's cowardly.
Yeah.
That's why I think Bayern lost that game rather than Real won it. And I think Thomas Tuchel made almost all of his decisions right before 80 minutes. They drew back. They were patient. Bayern didn't rush into anything, and they looked for every opportunity to play counter-attack.
I think they were really frustrating some of Madrid's attackers as well, because I think the likes of Vinny and Rodrigo really thrive on a high press and getting behind the defensive line, and Bayern just weren't letting that happen. They were just sitting back and waiting for Madrid to attack and they seemed to stop pretty much everything that Madrid were throwing at them until literally like the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's typical Thomas Tuchel football, and it worked. But just one or two mistakes would
cost the game.
Yeah, just to ruin all of the 80 minutes of effort. That's why I think Bayern lost that game. And as football fans, when our favorite team wins, we tend to look for every single article or story about that game after the game. But when they lose, you don't want to hear anything about that game, even football at all.
Exactly.
I have to say, this is the hardest episode of Sideline I have ever done. Not only because Bayern lost in such a dramatic way, but I have to analyze the game now together with a Real Madrid fan. I mean,
and I'm sure you're in the best mood ever, right, Tianyi? How are you feeling about this game?
What a game, first of all.
Typical Madrid though, right? Finding a way no matter what.
I mean, sitting here, talking calmly with you guys is the best I can do. I can easily go mad right now.
Okay, let's move it on then. Let's put it over to Tianyi. Yeah.
I think we can call it like a battle between Iron Man and Captain America.
Oh dear.
Oh, yeah.
The first leg of the two powerhouses was already very beautiful enough, but the second leg seemed to be even more amazing to watch.
More dramatic.
Just as I thought Real was doomed, and they just did it again. They come back from behind in a very magical way. And first of all, I actually feel very bad for Neuer, because he was brilliant for the whole match.
Yeah, he made like 4 or 5 pretty impressive saves.
Yeah, saved countless shots from Real and only made one single mistake. And it was that one mistake that cost them the game. And sometimes you just have to admit that luck was really a big part of the game. And this time luck wasn't on Neuer's side, obviously.
Yeah.
And
or Bayern's side, because I think, look, that particular moment definitely had an impact on the overall results. But I think obviously, the winning goal changed the tide and sent Madrid through to the final. But also when you think about some of the officiating decisions that were made, particularly with that De Ligt moment where he put the ball in the back of the net and the assistant referee raised his flag way too early with an offside decision, and then the ref also blew his whistle before play could continue.
Yeah, it's a shame.
So there were a couple of moments, and Tuchel also touched on this after the game, where he felt like the officiating was completely wrong, and he also hinted that some of the referees favor Real Madrid. So I think there was definitely an element of bad luck for Bayern, but also I think some question marks need to be asked about some of the officiating at this level.
Yeah, apart from the cause of apart from Neuer's blunder, I think Bayern also wasted so many great opportunities throughout the match. There were so many times that they initiated beautiful counterattacks and pushed the ball into Real's box area. But the finishes, the final passes or the final shots were really disappointing.
But then when it counted the most, where I think it was Harry Kane's long ball to Davies and then he cut inside and then let off that beautiful shot. Even though they were wasteful with chances, when it did come down to the moment where they needed to make something happen, they did. And then all of a sudden, in the last 10 minutes, with a couple of tactical changes and bad luck and some refereeing decisions, it all just went, all of that good work that Bayern had done went completely out the window. I haven't quite seen something like it for a very long time, where a team's performance just completely capitulated.
I think, I think a big part of their loss can be explained by Tuchel's strategy. When you you
or
got the
lack
lead.
thereof.
Yeah.
It seemed like more of a, like Yang Guang said, a bit of a fearful decision-making process as
Yeah.
opposed to doing something
Yeah.
that might have been right in that moment,
Yeah.
had he had a level head.
Yeah, when you got the lead early in the game, it seemed nothing wrong to take a defensive tactic. But consider it's the fact that there were still 20 minutes left and you are facing Real Madrid in the Champions League. The decision to replace Sané and Harry Kane seemed a little bit or too conservative for me.
Yeah.
And I think they could have gained more chances near the end. I agree with Yang Guang. Near the end of the game, if Kane, Sané, and Musiala were all on the pitch.
Yeah, I must say that's another name we haven't mentioned. Musiala, I also
Yeah,
think had a
Musiala was
fantastic
doing
game.
great,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I also think maybe the thought process from Tuchel was, I need fresh legs on to, kind of see this game out and kind of, have the energy to keep things tight and, see the game out. And he was maybe willing to sacrifice goal-scoring threats to make that happen. But to take off your 2 or 3 best attacking options, I think was the biggest mistake. He should have left at least Harry Kane on or Leroy Sané off to take all of those attacking threats off, Musiala, Sané, and Harry Kane. I think that's way too dramatic.
Yeah, in hindsight, this is definitely not something you should do at that particular moment.
Yeah, but that being said, I think Madrid also deserved credit, right?
Yeah.
Because they didn't have too many chances, and when those chances did come, like pouncing on Neuer's mistake and the second goal from Joselu as well, those 2 predatory strikes, I think he deserves a lot of credit for that, and Madrid's attackers too, because I think Bayern's defense up until like the last 5 or 10 minutes was pretty solid.
Yeah.
And Madrid didn't have too many chances, but when those chances came, they took them.
They took them. Yeah, on Real side, I think first of all, Vinicius Jr. is definitely the MVP for the team.
Yeah, one of the best players in the world now, surely.
Yeah.
I think him and Bellingham and I guess Mbappe are probably my top 3 at this point.
Yeah, he caused so much trouble to Bayern's defenders, particularly Joshua Kimmich.
Who did a pretty good job against Vinny.
Yeah.
To be fair, I mean,
Yeah.
look, like we discussed earlier before the show started, Vinny did cause Kimmich a couple of troubles and got past him a few times. But there were also a couple of moments that I recall where Kimmich put in some
Marked him
solid
really
tackles
well.
onto
Yeah.
Vinny and marked
Yeah.
him very well, but also very diligently. He stuck to his role, which
Yeah.
is also, very hard to do at that level because sometimes you can get distracted.
And as you said, credit must be given to Joselu.
Yes.
Those 2 goals.
The former Stoke striker, who could have seen a former Stoke striker at 34 years of age scoring 2 goals in a Champions League semi-final and saving, the biggest, most successful Champions League team in history. I mean, again, box office. It could be it's like a movie script.
Yeah, those 2 goals from him were really like worth €1 million.
Predators finish. That's what I like about it as well, is
Yeah.
that, you get these players, like for teams like Real Madrid and Bayern Munich that score these, insane solo goals like the Davy strike. But I love it when a striker just senses an opportunity and just like gets one in there. I think of the likes of Giroud and even Raul in his prime was a great predatory striker. And that's kind of what Joselu brought in this particular match.
It's strange. They can always smell the.
They're always in the right
sense.
place at the right time.
Yeah,
I mean, how could Joselu have known that Neuer would fumble like that and within less than a second be able to put it in the back of the net on the biggest stage in European football?
Yeah, so
amazing.
This is Real Madrid, guys.
This is Real Madrid.
Yeah,
Speechless.
always a different team in the Champions League.
And speaking of Real Madrid, they are through to, I don't even know how many finals they've been to. I know they've won 14 titles and they're going for their 15th. Yang Guang does, and they are up against Borussia Dortmund, who have failed in the final before, but have been consistent Champions League performers, I would say, for a long period of time. But when you look at it on paper, Real Madrid versus Borussia Dortmund, do you see any other winner than Real Madrid at this point?
I do want to say anything can happen.
Yep.
I do want to say you cannot underestimate any of your opponents, but come on. It's the Champions League final. It's the Champions League final.
But you say it that way, it's the Champions League final, right? I mean, I suppose if it was any other team than Real Madrid, literally anything could happen. But I think Real Madrid really see the Champions League as their competition, and they feel like if they lose it, it's an absolute disaster. And that mentality regardless of what kind of squad they've got or the tactics they use or the manager they have, they seem to just make it work. And I think they get through to that final and they think, okay, this is our competition, this is our moment. We just need to tick off one final box. And that calmness and experience might be something that gives them the edge. Or do you think Borussia Dortmund's just insane defensive efforts and, seemingly die-hard mentality could cause Madrid some problems?
I just think Real will win it, no matter who stands.
I can see the pain in your eyes saying that. I think Madrid are going to win it. I can see it's tearing out your soul.
Yeah, it's their competition, and Champions League
really
is in their gene and blood.
Yeah.
And I do think after a devastating loss for Bayern, I think I cannot be keeping reasonable about football anymore.
I don't think you can. That's the thing about the Champions League too. I think once you get to the semi-final and final stages, reasoning and looking at the form guide and anything that seems logical before kickoff always goes out the window. And I think that's what's so fantastic about this competition as well, is that anything can happen. I can't think of any other competition where we see so much consistent drama and excitement year after year after year. And I know this is very hard as a Bayern fan, but that game, I think, just tells me what the Champions League is all about. Fantastic football and dramatic moments and just, memories that I think many football fans will remember forever for good reasons and for bad reasons. And Tianyu, when you look at that final, of course, your team is through to another Champions League final up against a massive underdog. But that being said, Dortmund have done some incredible things to get through to this final and have shown incredible defensive efforts and resilient mental fortitude. Do you think that could give them a chance against this Madrid side? Or do you think that Madrid just have this locked up?
I think they definitely stand a chance. We should not underestimate Dortmund, this team. They had really a solid defense line and led by Hummels.
Yeah, one of the most experienced, talented centre-backs of, I would say, the last decade.
Yeah, and also Adeyemi and Sancho are the two attackers that you can't ignore. They have been really active in recent games for Dortmund.
And Sabitzer's been in there too, putting in some pretty solid performances in the midfield. And as a United fan, some of our Manchester United, I shouldn't say United rejects, but Erik ten Hag rejects have now got through to the Champions League final. So as a United fan, ten Hag out, please, because clearly these players have the talent and the ability to do it on the biggest level.
Yeah, Sancho especially, who has become really a different person after coming to Bundesliga. Yeah, I think so. I think they will cause some trouble to Real Madrid's defense line. And as a Real fan, I definitely want to see another trophy lifted by them. But
of course you do.
Yeah, but at the
because
same time,
14's not enough, right? Yeah, you have to have a 15th title.
We never have enough trophies.
Oh, man.
But at the same time, I think it would be really interesting to watch Erik ten Hag's reaction if Sancho got to win the Champions League title with Dortmund.
I'm loving all of the journalists constantly asking him now about Sancho, and he says, yes, I've always known he's a really good player. And you can see he's like, oh, I hate this. So it just makes me laugh too. I mean, look, I do feel sorry, I suppose, for Erik ten Hag, because everything he's tried has gone wrong. I mean, the way he dealt with De Gea, the way he dealt with Ronaldo, and Sancho now doing incredible things at Dortmund, and United sitting 8th in the league. So all of those fingers now seemingly point to ten Hag. So it's a difficult position that he's in now, although he might be Bayern Munich's problem very, very soon. So best of luck with that. But looking at Dortmund as well, I mean, who could have expected them to get through to the Champions League final, considering some of the opposition that they've faced? What do you make of Dortmund's progression to this point, Yang Guang?
I must say I'm super surprised because at the last 8 stage, I think they are the team with the least chances of going all the way.
Yeah, and the team that just nobody spoke about either. They kept climbing the ladder and kept getting through stage after stage after stage. But when you look at all of the post-match analysis and, some of the other TV shows that we've been watching prior to the Champions League semi-finals, Dortmund really weren't being spoken about.
Yeah, but look at them now.
Yeah.
If you watch their semi-final and quarter-final games, you would know they deserve this. They played super tough football.
Physical football too. That's what I like about it too. They get into their opponent's face. They are very solid defensively, and they make it very uncomfortable for other teams, which I think then, regardless of talent, kind of creates chances based on the other team's fatigue and frustration. And they also seemingly have the ability to take those chances when they arrive.
Yeah, they were super concentrated on the defensive side of the game, especially on how to guard Kylian Mbappe and isolate him with the rest of the PSG teammates. Matt Hummels was phenomenal. I saw a Chinese fan said on social media that Matt Hummels' performance in the semi-final reminds everyone his prime time when he was deemed as one of the best centre-backs in the world.
Yeah, for a long time.
Yeah, and Jadon Sancho as I think.
Look, we've always known he's had the ability, but for some reason, Erik ten Hag or not, he didn't get it right at Manchester United. He just seems to suit the Dortmund style better than Man United, I suppose, or maybe Dortmund just know how to manage him better.
Certainly, Dortmund has given him a more comfortable role to play.
And more freedom, yeah.
Yeah, and this success not only came from the field, the tactic side of the game, but also off the field in terms of his relationship with the club, with the team, with the coach, even with the fans.
Yeah, he's very highly valued at Dortmund.
I mean, the last time Dortmund was in the Champions League final was 11 years ago.
Yeah.
But if you look at this team, even though they have a different squad,
and that was a much stronger squad, I think, too.
Yeah. But their playing style remains pretty much the same compared with the 11 years earlier. They played really fast-paced football. They are
rock solid at the back.
Yeah, they are not obsessive with ball possession.
Yes.
They fully use the two wingers, and they moved ball very quickly from back to the front. I think that's the key why they can go this far.
Yeah, I think they've been very impressive, and I think that their tactics and I think the seemingly good vibe that is going around the squad at the moment, where players are playing at the highest level, showcasing their abilities, I think that's also been an important part of their success. And I think that now that they are in a position where they probably feel they won't get to again very soon, I think that mentality is going to be very beneficial for them as well. But that being said, I think against a side like Madrid, I think they are potentially going to struggle. But just, off the top of our heads, do you think, Madrid are going to win that final, Yang Guang?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And then, when you look at Dortmund's performance against PSG, Tianyu, of course, we spoke about how successful they've been and how they deserve to get through to this final. But do you think there was an element of luck to it as well?
You mean that
for Dortmund against PSG?
Yeah, I think when I was watching the first half of the semifinal between PSG and Dortmund, I was wondering how PSG managed to advance to the semifinal, because their manager Luis Enrique says he thinks they deserve to win the game because for creating over 30 shots and 4 times hitting the woodwork.
Yeah,
and he was saying luck.
That's where the luck comes into it. I mean, hitting the post 4 times, I mean, that is incredibly unlucky for PSG.
But I think their elimination should be blamed more on their poor performance in offense. For the majority of the game, the only means of arranging attacks for PSG was to let Dembele crossing the ball into the box and then getting intercepted by the defenders. Or see Vitinha shoot the ball far away from the box and give it to the goalkeeper.
Or just giving the ball to Mbappe and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
And with someone of his ability, sometimes that can work. But I think when you get to, for example, a semi-final stage and you come up against a defense like Dortmund's, even if you've got the world's greatest player, if you've got 2 or 3 players marking him and he's the only player that they really need to mark, I mean, there's only so much that Mbappe can do. So there has been a lot of criticism of Mbappe, but I think that's a little bit unfair. I think that he did put in solid efforts and he showed his abilities, but I also don't think that he was getting the service and the support from his teammates. And speaking of PSG, Yang Guang, it does look like Mbappe is going to go to Real Madrid, which must be very exciting as a Madrid fan. But that's going to leave a massive hole in PSG's attack. And I think there's a couple of other areas that are also very concerning for PSG across multiple areas on the pitch. I think it's going to depend on what Madrid can get for Mbappe. I mean, we're assuming that Mbappe is going to go, but it's seemingly like an unwritten fact that Mbappe is going to Madrid. So we're assuming that he is going. When that happens, I think it's going to depend on what PSG can get for him that could determine what they can do to reshape that squad. What are your thoughts?
I just think PSG's past transfer approach was just messy.
It seemed like a marketing campaign. It was like, let's just get the best players in the world and sell as many shirts as we can. And when the game starts, let's hope that Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe can just destroy defenses.
Yeah, I mean, Muani cost them like nearly 100 million euros.
Who?
And he stayed on the bench the whole 90 minutes on Tuesday's second leg.
But I mean, look, I laugh at that, but I mean, United's pulled off some pretty similar moves too, where we also spend, I mean, like, what, I think it was 90 million pounds on Anthony, and I was like, who? Very strange decisions, yeah.
And stats show that the whole bench of PSG cost them like 280 million euros in that Tuesday's clash. Way higher than the price of the starting 11 of Dortmund.
Yeah.
If you spend money
recklessly, yeah.
Recklessly,
But as a United fan, I can't comment, because if I look at some of the teams that we've had really big struggles against, and you look at the cost of our starting 11 or of our bench compared to some other clubs that we've played, like Coventry City, for example, in the FA Cup semi-finals, I mean, it's an absolute joke.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, you know, we always question the managers and the players, but I think some of the guys that are, you know, putting through the financials for some of these transfers, they also need to sit in front of journalists and explain themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of PSG's, you know, approach, what can they do differently if Mbappe leaves?
I think they need to play more practical strategies and build a solid team over years.
Yeah.
Like other big money funded teams like Manchester City and Chelsea, they spent like years, even a decade, to build a championship team.
Particularly with City, I think people forget how long it took them to get to this
reconstruction.
point. It started very early on, where they started also like kind of signing big names like Robinho and just hoping for the best. But then they seemed to shift away to a longer approach, and they're bearing the fruits of that now. And because of all of the success we're seeing from them now, we forget what they did in the past. But I would say it took them at least a decade to get to this point. I don't know if a club like PSG has that patience, though.
Yeah, it's a long process. I think City has finished that process, and Chelsea is now again returning to that process.
Yeah, still a bit messy, but it does seem like they are getting to a point where things might work out for them.
Yeah.
But it is still looking very shaky, very inconsistent.
I think PSG must trust that process. Otherwise, they cannot get immediate results.
Yeah, I agree. And of course, before that even happens, we've got a Champions League final between Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund to look forward to, which I think is going to be absolutely thrilling. Not so great for you, young one, but for, you know, just standard football fans, I think it's going to be an amazing game to watch. But that's all we have time for on this week's episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we will be back next week with our latest topic, and we'll see you then.
This is CGTN Radio. Hear the difference.